sound like a bomb going off, then absolute silence. No scream, no goodbye. Just the faint sound of wind rushing through a 7-inch hole in a windshield. Jenna was still shouting her friend's name into the phone, not knowing she was listening to the sound of a 20-year-old girl's life being extinguished by a landscaping rock traveling at 100 miles per hour. This wasn't an accident. This was weaponized indifference. And tonight, we unlock Dossier number 42, The Boys Who Hunted for Sport.
It is an incredibly dark entry. When we examine the source material for this deep dive, the police records, the interrogation tapes, court transcripts from Jefferson County, Colorado, we aren't just looking at a timeline. We are staring straight into a psychological abyss.
We really are.
Because this isn't a crime of passion. It certainly isn't for profit. It's a textbook case study in psychopathic detachment.
Right. And to really unpack this, we need to trace the physical destruction first, because when you first hear the premise, you might think, oh, teenagers, a bad prank, a tragic accident.
Exactly.
But looking at these sources, this was never a prank. We are tracking a 45-minute spree of violence, an unbelievable cover-up involving parents, and a group of young men essentially playing a lottery with human souls.
Highly lethal lottery.
Yeah. It starts just after 10:00 p.m. on April 19th, 2023. It's dark, the roads are quiet, and a pattern starts to emerge that is, it's just anything but accidental.
It's a pattern of rapid escalation. And to understand the severity here, we really have to look at the physics before we even touch the psychology. We aren't talking about pebbles bouncing off a bumper.
No, not at all.
We are talking about heavy landscaping rocks, some the size of a human skull, stripped from the earth at a Walmart parking lot, and then introduced into a high-velocity environment.
And the first victim we have on record, Nathan, he describes this perfectly. He's driving along, he sees a truck coming the opposite way, and then boom.
Total devastation.
He told police it was like a shotgun went off inside his car. The glass shattered everywhere, it cut his shoulder, he was terrified, but he didn't stop. He actually kept driving because he had a primal, gut-wrenching instinct that he was under attack.
And that description, saying it's like a shotgun, that isn't hyperbole, it's just math.
Right.
Let's break down the physics, because this is exactly where the whole prank defense completely falls apart.
Right.
If the victim is driving at 45 miles per hour, and the boys in the truck are driving 45 miles per hour the opposite direction, and then they actively throw a heavy rock,
Yeah.
you have to combine those velocities.
So the impact speed is what, 90? 100 miles per hour?
Easily. A 5 to 6 pound rock hitting a windshield at 100 miles per hour, it carries the kinetic energy of a cannonball.
God.
At that exact moment of release, it ceases to be a stone. It becomes a munition. It is simple physics applied with extreme malicious intent.
And it just kept happening. That's the thing. This wasn't a one-off mistake. Another driver, a young college student named Lux, she's driving her Acura. A rock crashes through her windshield. It cuts her neck.
It's horrifying.
She told police later that the rock left a 3-inch indentation in her back seat.
Let's just pause on that detail for a second. 3 inches. That's the indentation left in the actual upholstery of the car. Inches. That's the only difference between a bruised shoulder and a closed casket. Do these boys realize they were playing the lottery with human souls?
That is the question that haunts this entire dossier. Because while Lux and Nathan were terrified and bleeding, they survived. Alexa Bartell did not. And the way her body was discovered, it's just heartbreaking.
It truly is.
Her friend Jenna, who was on the phone with her, tracked Alexa's phone the moment the call cut out.
And this is where modern technology plays such a grim role in the narrative. We have geofencing, we have Find My Friends. Jenna didn't sit around and wait for the police to connect the dots.
No, she saw the dot on the map stop moving in a field. And she drove straight to the location. She was probably thinking, maybe the battery died, maybe there was a minor fender bender.
And instead, she walks into a scene of absolute devastation.
Alexa's small yellow car had just careened off the road into this dark field. And the forensic details here, they're difficult to discuss, but they're necessary to grasp the sheer violence of what happened.
The forensic twist really anchors the reality of the crime.
Yeah. There was a fist-sized rock found right near the roadway. Inside the car, biological matter was splattered across the back seat. The rock didn't just break the window, it punched a 7-inch hole cleanly through the glass and struck Alexa.
And you have to consider the absolute chaos for the first responders arriving at that scene. They see the physical damage, they see the fatality, but they don't immediately know who or why. They have to be thinking, is this a sniper? Is this targeted road rage?
Or is it just mailbox baseball gone horribly wrong? Because I think that's what I would assume at first, just kids being absolute idiots.
That is the standard initial assumption. Kids making poor choices.
Yeah.
But this investigation takes a sinister turn very quickly. When you look at the forensic consistency, the deliberate targeting of multiple cars over a focused 45-minute window, this moves from a prank to a hunt.
Yes.
The police realized almost immediately they were dealing with mobile predators.
But the terrifying thing is, they had nothing to go on at first. No license plate, no witnesses who saw the driver's face. The breakthrough actually comes from a tip. And this part is fascinating. The classic snitch dilemma.
A very heavy burden for a teenager.
Right. A teenager we only know as JB contacts the police. He tells them about 3 friends. Joseph Koenig, who everyone calls Joe Nicholas Carroll Chick, who goes by Mitch, and Zachary Kwok.
JB is the absolute linchpin of this entire case. You have to imagine the intense social pressure he was under. In that specific high school circle, turning in your friends is seen as the ultimate betrayal. But JB gave the police something far more valuable than just 3 names.
What do you mean?
He gave them a psychological profile.
Oh, right. He warns them specifically about Joe Koenig. He says Joe has this long history of causing chaos. And he quotes Joe saying something that I honestly cannot get out of my head. He told JB, quote, "It's like you killed somebody, but like, ain't no fun in games no more."
Ain't no fun in games no more. That statement is a terrifying window into a very dark room.
It really is.
It implies a profound, dangerous boredom with regular life. A psychological state we might call anhedonia, where normal stimuli just don't register anymore. It can only be cured by extreme stimulus. In this case, lethal violence.
Like the thrill of a normal prank had just completely faded for him.
Exactly. He needed to significantly up the ante just to feel anything at all.
So, armed with this tip, the police finally move in. And this is where the story shifts from the dark streets to these bright suburban living rooms. We see 3 very different reactions, and not just from the boys, but from their families. And the parents in this dossier, they baffle me almost as much as the kids do.
The parental response is a deeply fascinating subplot here. It really highlights the environment these boys were returning to after their spree. It forces us to ask, where does this level of indifference actually come from?
Let's start with Mitch. The police show up. He is terrified. He's completely cooperative. His parents are absolutely stunned. They hand over the keys to the truck right away. They seem completely blindsided that their son could be involved in a murder, which feels, I don't know, normal.
Yes, that is the reaction of vulnerable normalcy. Shock, disbelief, total cooperation with law enforcement. That is exactly what you expect from a family completely caught off guard.
But then you look at the arrest of Joe Koenig. The police get to his house and they immediately have to go through his father, Mark. Mark comes out, he is aggressive, he is actively obstructionist, he flat out refuses to let the police speak to Joe.
It's a classic standoff, but an incredibly risky one. The father is attempting to control the narrative and negotiate terms for a first-degree murder investigation.
And it gets so bizarre. Mark actually walks Joe back inside the house and shuts the front door right in the officers' faces. He tries to tell them, "We'll make an appointment for tomorrow."
Like it's a routine dentist visit.
Exactly. Not a homicide investigation where a girl is dead.
It highlights a staggering theme of extreme enabling behavior. Mark is eventually arrested for obstruction himself. But think about the psychological message that it sends to his son.
Yeah, that he's untouchable.
If the father is willing to literally blockade the police, what other destructive behaviors has he shielded Joe from in the past? If this is the defense mechanism against law enforcement, what was the discipline like for the earlier behavior JB warned the cops about?
It paints a very clear picture. And finally, there's Zach Kwok. He gets arrested a few hours later, and his father's advice to him in that exact moment, he looks right at his son and says, "The only word you know is lawyer."
Self-preservation above all else. It's pragmatic from a legal standpoint, yes, but it is also incredibly telling. The immediate focus isn't, what did you do? Or did you hurt an innocent person? The singular focus is, how do we survive the legal fallout?
So the walls are definitely up, but eventually the police get these boys into the interrogation rooms, and that wall of silence starts to crumble. Mitch cracks first. He places Zach right in the back seat of the truck, and he starts describing the dynamic inside that vehicle. And this is where I really wanted to ask you about the group psychology aspect, because Mitch describes something he calls a game.
This is where we witness the concept of moral disengagement playing out in real time.
Mitch tells the investigators that Zach wasn't just throwing rocks randomly out the window. He was actively using Marine terminology. He was calling out contact left, contact right, and fire to time the throws perfectly.
Think deeply about that specific language.
Yeah.
Contact, fire. These are strict terms of engagement used in a war zone. Why use them on a suburban highway?
To make it feel less real.
because it completely reframes the reality of their actions. If you say, "I'm going to throw a heavy rock at that girl in the Honda," you are describing a violent crime against a human being. But if you say, "Contact left, fire," you are simply engaging a tactical target.
It's like they were LRRPing, like they were inside a video game.
Precisely. They were militarizing a joyride. It's a cognitive restructuring mechanism, often used by soldiers, to cope with the immense trauma of war. But these kids utilized it to cope with committing murder. They dehumanized their victims to the point where they were nothing more than coordinates to be struck.
And the emotional reaction inside the truck totally reinforces that detachment. Mitch told the cops that when they successfully hit a car, the vibe was pure excitement. But when they missed, it was just disappointment.
It validates the exact concept of weaponized indifference. The only emotional spike they registered was the visceral thrill of a direct hit. The agonizing suffering of the person inside the vehicle simply didn't register on their radar. The only tragedy to them was a missed shot. This is also a textbook lethal example of group polarization.
Group polarization. Break that down for us.
It's a psychological phenomenon where a group collectively makes decisions that are far more extreme than the initial inclination of any individual member.
Okay, so feeding off each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have three young men in a highly confined space, a moving vehicle, feeding off each other's adrenaline. The moral barriers lower dramatically, and the appetite for risk just skyrockets. One boy suggests a rock, the next suggests a much bigger rock, the third points out a moving target. Individually, sitting alone in their rooms, they might never have done this. Together, they morphed into a single, destructive entity.
Now, naturally, once they're separated, the blame game starts. Zach, despite his dad's very clear advice, he talks. He tries to completely flip the script. He claims he was just a passive passenger watching these idiots throw rocks. He even tries to give an alibi, saying he was home watching Rick and Morty.
A completely verifiable lie, and a remarkably weak one. When the seasoned interrogator presses him to simply name a character from the show, he can't do it. It perfectly illustrates this bizarre immaturity clashing with the severe adult reality of a murder investigation.
Zach claims Joe, who was driving, was the real ringleader. Mitch claims Zach was the one throwing the fatal rock. It's just this messy web of finger-pointing. But then we get to the part of the story that I think is the most difficult to stomach. I really struggled reading this section of the transcript.
A return to the scene.
Yes, the return. After hitting Alexa's car, they realized she went off the road. They knew they hit her. They saw her crash. And they didn't call 911. They didn't panic and speed home to hide under the covers.
No, their core instinct wasn't fear. It wasn't remorse. It was morbid curiosity.
They actually turned the truck around, they drove back to the crash site, and they didn't just drive by quickly once, they drove past that dying girl's car multiple times. Mitch describes it in his confession. They deliberately slowed down. They went from 80 miles per hour down to 60, then coasted down to 50.
Why? Why decelerate at the scene of your own crime?
To take a picture. Zach Quack literally took out his phone and snapped a photo of the wreckage.
Let's just sit with the gravity of that for a moment. They didn't flee in fear, they circled back, they stared at the wreckage they created, and they took a photograph. A trophy, a digital memento of a murder. Ask yourself, what kind of human being captures a selfie with a dying woman?
It is sickening. The police asked Zach point blank, "Why did you take a picture?" And his response, he said, "I thought the other guys would want it, like it was a cheap souvenir from a trip to the zoo."
This is the absolute peak definition of psychopathic detachment. They treated a fatal crime scene like a roadside tourist attraction. It signifies a total, catastrophic collapse of human empathy. To these boys, Alexa Bartell wasn't a person in agony. She was content. She was a spectacle for their group chat.
And that photo, Zach ended up deleting it. But the fact that it existed at all is the darkest puzzle piece of this entire dossier. It haunts me because it implies that for a few minutes at least, they were actively proud of what they had done.
It connects directly back to that modern, almost compulsive impulse to document everything. But here, it's filtered through a lens of pure psychopathy. The underlying thought is, if you don't document the kill, did it even happen? It proves that for a brief, sinister window, they were seeking validation for the absolute destruction they caused.
Eventually, the legal system caught up with all of them. The prank defense obviously didn't hold any water in court. But the trial wasn't entirely straightforward either. We essentially saw the prisoner's dilemma play out in real time.
We did. In a multi-defendant conspiracy case like this, the first one to cooperate usually secures the best deal. Both Mitch and Zach took plea deals with the agreement to testify against Joe.
But at trial, there was a major twist. Mitch completely changed his story on the stand.
He did, and this was an incredibly high-stakes moment in the courtroom. He admitted under oath that he lied during his initial interrogations to protect Joe, simply because they were best friends.
Right.
He finally admitted that Joe Koenig was actually the one who threw the fatal rock that killed Alexa, not Zach.
Which perfectly aligns with that initial psychological profiling JB gave the police, that Joe was the one constantly escalating, the one who felt there was no fun in games no more. But wait, if Mitch was the one who cooperated and testified, why did he end up with such a massively harsh sentence?
That really speaks to the complexity of the justice system in these conspiracy cases. The judge handed down the sentences. Zachary Quack received 32 years, Mitch Karolchek received 45 years, and Joseph Koenig. He was found guilty of first-degree murder with extreme indifference. He received life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 60 years.
So why did Mitch get more time than Zach if Mitch was the star witness?
The judge likely viewed Mitch's initial deception, actively lying to investigators to protect the actual killer, as a severe aggravating factor. He deliberately obstructed the truth for a very long time. But I want to draw your attention back to Joe's specific charge, first-degree murder with extreme indifference to human life.
Yeah, please explain that, because usually when we hear first-degree murder, it means I planned to kill this specific person. They didn't know Alexa at all.
Exactly. In Colorado law, extreme indifference is a very specific, very heavy legal standard. It applies when a defendant engages in conduct that creates a grave risk of death to a person or multiple persons and demonstrates a total, chilling lack of caring whether someone lives or dies.
Wow.
It's not, I want to kill Alexa. It's, I don't care if Alexa dies as long as I get my adrenaline rush. The law argues that this specific brand of indifference is just as lethal and just as legally culpable as premeditated malice.
It fits this case perfectly. They didn't hate her, they just completely did not care about her existence.
And philosophically speaking, that is arguably more terrifying than targeted hate.
It's so hard to wrap your head around. It started with something so incredibly mundane, loading landscaping rocks at a Walmart.
Yeah.
Vulnerable normalcy. And it ended with a bright young woman dead and 3 lives effectively over behind bars.
It brings us full circle back to the core concept of the silent dossier. We're always looking for these complex, easily digestible motives: money, jealousy, revenge.
Yeah, a reason for the madness.
But the terrifying reality of Dossier 42 is that for these young men, the immense suffering of others was not a deterrent. It was entertainment. It was a video game with high-resolution graphics and flesh-and-blood consequences.
And that's what really stays with me as we close this out. The image of that truck turning around in the dark, the headlights slowly sweeping over the ruined field, the glow of a phone screen coming out to snap a picture. The photo is deleted, sure, but the sinister impulse to take it remains. It makes you wonder what other digital trophies are sitting in deleted folders hidden behind passcodes on phones all around us.
It absolutely forces us to confront the depths of darkness that can exist behind the most ordinary faces in our communities.
Stay vigilant. You really never know who is in the car coming the other way.
Indeed.
That's it for dossier number 42.
But the darkness remains. Your next dossier is ready, and it's even more disturbing than this one. Click here to open it.